This video is sponsored by thingpenguin.com. Leah, I'm fully recording now. Is that all right?
Yep, that's fine.
Leah Cushman, state rep from New Hampshire. Uh, you out of where?
Yes,
Okay. And you did not run for re-election this year, correct?
correct.
Uh, I'm Dave Ridley, ridleyreport.com, and I interview liberty-oriented people in New Hampshire politics. Leah is one of them.
Hey.
So one of the things that I wanted to ask you about was a news item that didn't get it got some news coverage, but I didn't feel like there was enough detail. You are the chair of the, is it HHS, the Health and Human Services Committee? Or are you still the chair of that?
I was a member of the House Health and Human Services Committee, not the chair.
Oh, okay. I thought you were the chair because of the news item, and that was that apparently you put bureaucrats under oath when they came before your committee. Is that correct?
Um, Sort of, not quite. I was the chair of the special committee on DCYF, on the Division for Children, Youth, and Families, which was formed in early 2024, but at my request by the Speaker. Per House rules, the Speaker appoints committees, special committees. And I had approached him in October of 2023, I believe was the earliest I started talking with him about having the committee formed because I had been receiving complaints from constituents and members out of the public outside of my district about DCYF's practices and failing to provide due process and even committing perjury, falsifying court records, things like that. This was on the heels of the Harmony Montgomery trial that was going on, and actually it was like right in the middle of it. And so I could see that there were problems. So I asked the speaker, hey, like, can we look into this? We have to, it's our job to redress grievances. And so he did form that committee. And so it took us a while to get there. You want the details, I'll give you the full details. So October I asked him, and then he took like a really long time. We had a series of meetings, each one like weeks and weeks. It felt like he was dragging his feet. He did agree initially, um, and was like, yeah, and you can put, whoever you want on it. Let me know who you want. And then he was like, I need to talk to the minority leader. And I feel like every time we'd have a meeting, he would take away a little bit more of my ability to, put good people on the committee. Like first it was that the minority leader was going to appoint all of the Democrats, and like he did that as like a courtesy to the minority leader because it's the speaker who does it. And then it was I had to be limited in who I put on my side to either members of the Health and Human Services Committee or Children and Family Law, which fine. I was like, everything that he did, I think I voiced a couple of times like, hey, like why? But I didn't want to make too much of a fuss of it because I just wanted the committee to start doing its work. Um, and so in the meantime, I was reading Mason's Manual of Legislative Procedure, which if you're not familiar with that, it's basically just kind of a, a compilation of parliamentary law. And parliamentary law is a branch of common law. So it's based off of precedent and, of all basically Western legislative bodies and how they've conducted themselves and what they're able to do. And I, I wanted to know exactly how to do what I was doing. And we had always had these issues with bureaucrats and even like lobbyists coming in and lying to us in committee hearings and knowing that DCYF was kind of, the accusations were that they were being, um, dishonest. I wanted to make sure that we had it set up so that, it was going to procure the most honest testimony possible. And in 27, I looked up, the House's history of doing oaths. There's an RSA 1414. It's one of the oldest ones, oldest laws. It was like before the RSAs even existed. It was there giving chairs of committees the authority to, actually, it's any legislator, the ability to administer oaths to witnesses in testimony before a committee. But parliamentary procedure makes the chair the head of the committee. So if, like, say one of my members of the committee made the motion, which is what happened, and then I would rule on the motion, subject to an override by a vote of the entire committee. That's how it works. And so I was like, all right, this is how we do it. Um, and I looked at how investigative committees, because we have a little bit different setup for committees than what Mason says, but basically the nature of the committee, we were trying to investigate a matter and get to the bottom of it. So you treat it a certain way. It's like you treat it in a quasi judicial fashion. So, oaths made complete sense. Nothing in House rules said that we couldn't administer oaths or had to do anything special to do it. And where rules are silent, we default to Masons. So the first meeting went fine. It was organizational. The second meeting, um, members of the public came in. DCYF hadn't shown up yet, which you would think that they would have been there from day one. This is a committee made about them. And they weren't there at the first meeting. They weren't there at the second meeting. And but I was going to set the precedent, and this is the standard for this committee. And I asked all of the members of the public to swear oath. Well, one of the members made the motion, and I explained my reasoning why. I said I think that's a good idea, and we had talked about it before. And so, but I just wanted the public to understand too, and they were all happy to. I think they felt it added weight to their testimony. And these were people who were coming in to tell their story about how they were victimized by DCYF. Some of them had stories about how DCYF left their child with people who were abusing their child, and some had stories about how DCYF took their children or launched investigations on them and were doing things that were not in line with how due process is supposed to be carried out. And so we got like halfway through, and I received a note from the committee researcher on my desk in front of me, and it said, the speaker asks that you please stop with the oaths. Oh no, it said check your email. So I checked my email, and it was a message from one of the staff, and that's what it said. Speaker asked that you stop. And so
And
I
this
called.
this is from this is from is this from Packard?
Yes,
Sherman Packard, Speaker of the New Hampshire House.
correct.
Okay.
Yep. So I paused the meeting, and I recessed and called a caucus of the Republicans. And I was like, oh, like, what do you guys think we should do? Just asking their advice. And I got a couple of different answers, but ultimately I decided to have my vice chair, who is Erica Leon from Derry, who's the chair of Health and Human Services, go up and just, like, because we were halfway through the meeting. And I'm like, we can't stop in the middle, because now we're going to have, testimony is going to have different weight. I'm going to have to weigh, the sworn testimony as, compared to unsworn testimony. And it just didn't seem right either to have like half of the people swear oath and then half not. So I sent her up, and she came back down, and I stepped out of the committee room with her, and she said, the speaker said if you don't stop the oaths right now, he's going to dissolve the committee.
Did he give a reason for why he thought you shouldn't be administering oaths?
So not right then, but I continued with the oaths after that, and I went upstairs with another rep, JD Bernardi, and went into his office. And I mean, the first thing he said when I went into the room was, you have to stop with the oaths." And I said, "Why?" And um, the first thing he said was, "We don't do that here." And I said, "Well, why not?" And he said, "Because you're not going to get the agency to come in if you, or well, first he said, we just don't do it." And I said, "Well, it's been done before, just in 2017 it was done. And several years before that in another committee. And um, we don't do that here." And then he said, "You have to be," and he had been saying this the whole time, and he said it the whole time while I was in office. Basically, you have to be, there's nothing we can do about it when people lie. You have to just, that just means that you keep it in mind for next time they're in front of you. And, um, and then he said, um, sorry, I lost my train of thought. There's nothing you can
Oh,
do. When people lie. Oh, and if you're not super nice to, like, basically we have to be very, very nice to the agencies who, you know, basically we're the we're overseeing them and making sure they're conducting well. But we have to be very nice to them or they won't come in and they won't testify. And I said, "Well, then we subpoena them." And he's like, "That's a power we have." And then he was like, "Well, the Democrats would never go for that. They would stop us, or the judicial branch would stop us." And Steve Smith is actually, and I had mentioned subpoenas before, and Steve Smith had laughed at me. And so, like, I mean, but that was not in the context of like administering oaths. Although I did mention in a meeting with the speaker before, like I could put them under oath, and he didn't say anything. So yeah,
did
at
you
this,
did you get video of this meeting?
no,
Do you th how what do you think would have happened if you tried to whip out a camera and just said I'm audio taping?
yeah, I don't know. I don't know, but I did have a witness. So he would vouch for what happened, and he did, to the entire caucus, the Republican caucus. But yeah, and then so yeah, the Democrats would stop, and I said, "Well, won't that be a great day for Republicans? Everyone in this state pretty much knows that there's problems with this agency. I mean, we've got the YDC, abuse cases that the settlements are could bankrupt the state. We're looking at like $1 billion in settlements." And um, and then he just like he ran out of like reasons and was like, "If you don't stop, I'm going to dissolve the committee." And I stood my ground. I said, "That's really like," he was like, "My hands are tied. I really didn't want to do this, but if you don't stop, I'm going to dissolve the committee." And so I was like, "I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker. I hope you reconsider. But I think this is the best thing for the committee, and I don't think you should take the people's committee because of it." And then so the meeting was over. I left. And I mean, I want to mention too, like during that, while he was talking, he every time I countered his argument, well, when I countered his like last argument, he kind of like looked around the room for more. Like, I don't know. I saw fear in his eyes. Like to me, it was like someone else is putting pressure on you to stop me, and I don't understand why. And
Well,
I could speculate, you know what I mean? But uh,
Packard has a history of being scared of things he shouldn't be scared of. Like during the Real ID crisis in, I guess it would have been 2005, he was, I don't remember what his position was at that time, but he said, "Well, I hate Real ID, but we just can't do anything about it." It was this federal program, and he just was, he was all about caving, even though he didn't like it.
yeah, that's kind of his. That's just kind of how he operates, honestly. And I think I also said to him during that meeting, like he was like, "You don't understand what we go through in this office," because we had a slim majority, and he's always upset about how he's facing so much pressure from the Dems, and he's scared that they're gonna, vacate the chair. He mentioned it several times, And I was like, I understand, it's probably difficult dealing with them because I deal with them too, but you can't let them lead you around by your nose, which he probably didn't help me.
Oh
But
yeah, and the nastier they get, or the worst things they want you to do, the more great video you can get of them telling you to do something terrible. But it
right.
does seem like, and I'm sorry to lecture you about this.
No, that's okay.
I lecture everybody about this. No one ever gets video. It seems like.
Well, because these are like private conversations. I mean, that wouldn't be my first thought to go get video. Um, because we work as typically like you work as a team, with your Republican counterparts to, try to pass legislation and do the people's business. And you don't want to get it leaked to Democrats. And, it just wouldn't be my thought to get video.
Yeah, and almost everyone feels the same as you, and it's kind of sad because we're entering a period of time where there's going to be probably a 3 to 5 year period of time where getting video isn't always going to be enough because people will think it's fake, or people will be able to claim that it's fake.
Oh man,
We've had a brief period of not American but of world history, I guess, of human history where
you could trust it.
you could prove things with a device, and we're losing
Right.
that. We're going back to the 18th century method of he said, she said, and until some new technology comes along to prove things.
Right.
But
Having witnesses.
yeah, what was the most egregious thing you feel that happened to you as part of this process?
The most egregious? I'm not sure. I think just threatening to dissolve the whole committee was the worst part. Like, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So when I went home, I got a call from someone from the speaker's office. This time it was another member of my special committee on DCYF, two people who I really, really trusted and worked side by side with the entire time I've been in the House. It was, well, was one was Erica Leon, and then Jim Kofalt called me and said, I'm calling you for the speaker. Now you have three options. And it was you can stop the oaths. He could remove you as chair, or he could dissolve the committee. And um, and so I was like, yeah, I'm just going to stand my ground. It's his call, but it's punitive, and I think it's wrong. And that was on a Monday, and all bad news comes on Fridays in the House. And so on Friday, well, during that week, I was reaching out to the majority leader and trying to talk to him about it and get his help, Jason Osborne.
Yeah,
And he,
who by the way is a free stater. He signed the letter of intent, I believe. He's like a full-blown free stater. He used to go to Porkfest in 2008. I mean, advertiser on Free Talk Live. I mean,
yeah,
actually, I'm not positive that he signed the letter of intent, but he checks all the boxes.
right. Yeah, well, now I would say he's a 100% grifter. But that's a whole other story. But he was like really just like totally unhelpful. He was like, what we need to do is like change rules so that we, put it in rules that we can do oaths. And I'm like, we already have, the only reason we would ever need to put it in rules is to restrict the use of administering oaths. I'm like, there's no reason this is how it's done. And meanwhile, I wrote a letter to the editor, and I was kind of, because the Democrats had objected during the hearing, the meeting, to the oaths, Lucy Weber especially. And I had written a letter to the editor, or an op-ed to the union leader, saying, this is why oaths are good practice. Congress has people swearing under oath. Many states have people swearing under oath before their legislative committees. I sent some emails to the other members of the House citing what Congress does, what other states do, explaining what Mason says about it, explaining what the RSAs say about it, and when it was done in the past, trying to just like get support, and so I could show Sherm and be like, hey, like, look, like fear not, there's nothing to be afraid of. Like, this is a good practice. It's good for us. It's good for the people. It's just, and then Friday came and he just removed me from the committee. And so at the time I was one of the assistant majority whips, so I resigned from that. So resigned from my leadership position. And
Well,
yeah, so
what made you think it would be an advantage? I mean, I can see how it's an advantage to make someone else use their power against you. That works. But why did you resign from the whip position?
um basically just as I don't want to be a part of this like little club up here who's kind of wheeling and dealing on the people's rights. I just didn't like what I was seeing, and the position really didn't, all it did was give me more work every week. So, it
Yeah,
was just,
yeah. Is that also, did that play a role in you deciding not to run again?
no, well, it solidified. I knew I wasn't going to run again. I had been telling people for a year that I wasn't going to seek a third term. I had my daughter in the house chamber with me her like entire first year of life, and bringing her to a babysitter every day, and I have three older kids too, and they're all kind of, and I homeschool all of them. So like they're all kind of in pivotal points in their schooling. Like my oldest son had just started high school, and my next son down was just entering second grade. And then, my little guy was getting into kindergarten, and it was just a lot. So I wasn't, I put in a good fight for 4 years. I felt I had done my civic duty, and it was my time to pass the torch anyway.
Yeah, when I ran for rep in '08, the plan was to never even sponsor a piece of legislation and
Hmm.
find someone on the other side, find an authoritarian and make an agreement with them that neither of us would ever sponsor legislation. I never probably never could have found someone like that. But just, get as little
Hmm.
done as possible and maybe not even show up all that much. And fortunately, I didn't win. I was kind of scared I would.
Well, I mean, there are a lot of bills, so it's helpful to not do that because it's a heavy workload, but we did get some things accomplished, and I think it's mostly despite the leadership, not because of it, but they love to take the credit for it.
Yeah. Are you technically a free stater? Did you sign the statement of intent?
I don't think I signed a statement of intent. I found out about it after I moved here. I went to Freeware, and somebody invited me, and I went to one of the dinners that they have. People meet up, people who like liberty in Ware every couple of weeks, and someone told me about it. And then I was like, oh, that's cool. Like, that sounds awesome. That's kind of why I moved here anyway. So I did sign on. I don't know if that's a statement of intent, but
Yeah, so I try to count the number of free staters that are in the house, but it's hard to do because my definition is probably more stringent. I consider it a person who joined the Free State Project, signed the letter of intent that they would move to New Hampshire for more freedom, and
yeah,
then
and then
moved.
moved.
And yeah, and so a lot of people don't actually fit all those, they don't check all those boxes because they never actually signed the letter of intent, or they never heard about it until after they got here, even though they were moving for the same reasons. Does that make sense?
Sure. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, same. So that it's like hard to, put a strict outline on who is and who isn't because a lot of us don't fit it. But I was all for it, I support the movement. I don't necessarily support everyone in it, but I like the
No,
idea of
there is no such thing as a free stater who supports all the free staters.
it.
Yeah. What's your take on the number? What would you think would be the number of free staters in the House? I mean, as best you can define it, people who moved, to New Hampshire and then ran for House for freedom.
um, who who knew about it and signed on, like and fit that strict um, definition, or just maybe just like liberty legislators who moved here for freedom.
Yeah, I guess the strict definition, and they
Oh,
became, including being actually elected to the House.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I would say maybe 20. I don't know though, to be honest.
Yeah, that would be my guess as well. People keep saying 40, but I think it's just too I think they're having too much difficulty determining who fits the strict definition.
Yeah, actual free staters, it's probably a really small number. But libertarian leaning, or like really hardcore libertarian Republicans, there's a lot. I don't know about this cohort now, but who's entering the House, who will be sworn in on December 4th. But during my time, we had it. We had like probably 70 or 80 in the Freedom Caucus who would pretty much vote the same way.
The Freedom Caucus?
Yep.
I'm actually not even familiar with that.
Yeah, we have a House Freedom Caucus, typically every term. People who, are for limited government, low taxes, constitutional rights, um, kind of coalesce and vote as a block. It was much stronger the first term, my first term. Second term, one of our tri-chairs like was kind of MIA, and there was not we didn't have it wasn't as organized. But we would they have a Twitter and a website and everything.
Have you guys been able to pull in any Democrats into that?
No.
Seth, you know Seth Hippel, the lawyer.
Yes. Yep.
Seth has this claim that he feels like he's had to pull away from the New Hampshire Liberty movement to some extent because, especially in the House, he feels like it's just too right leaning. Do you think he's got a point?
No.
Why not?
Um, because I think that by definition, I mean, if you believe in liberty, I guess it falls on the right side of, I guess, if you're talking about like the four, the two axis kind of compass, um, I don't think it's too right leaning at all. I think that the left is just way too far left, so they just never fit in with us. They don't understand natural rights. They don't understand natural law, and they don't ascribe to it. They're kind of mostly utilitarian and rather than like individualist. So
So I took the. Have you ever taken the Nolan test, the two-dimensional ideological test?
yeah.
So I scored in the lower right in 2003, I guess. I guess I considered myself more right then than I am now. I
Hmm.
I try to be a centrist as best I can and a neutral where I can, but I would still score somewhere on the right. And maybe that's because of flaws in the test. That low means libertarian and right means right wing. But sometimes the right wing position is the same as the libertarian position. Sometimes the left wing position is the same as the left wing position. But my theory is that the Nolan chart is a little bit flawed and doesn't account for certain things, and also the ACU ratings don't account. There, 7 of the 10 American Conservative Union planks or litmus tests are would be the same as a libertarian litmus test. At
Hmm.
least as of 20 years ago, I haven't been following it real closely.
Sure. I
But if
guess
you,
it's like what specific issues you're talking about too.
yeah, I mean, I haven't. That's the part I haven't done. It would be good to just lay out as many issues as you can, and then put them on a scale and see how many of them are left and how many of them are right. I think it's more than 7 out of 10 that would. I mean, I think it's less than 7 out of 10 that would be considered um, conservative libertarian alignment. I think the ACU is just being more libertarian, but I don't know. It's super complicated, and that's
Mm,
why it's so difficult even to vote.
yeah.
How do you vote for freedom? It's just really, I mean, it can be done, but it requires research.
Yes, you have to research. You have to be an informed citizen. I mean, I think that libertarians try to reinvent the wheel all the time. I think that the founders had it perfect. I think they created a very good system. But the problem is that, like any system, it's dependent on an informed and involved people. And if you're not informed and involved people, then, you're abrogating your duty.
Now there I'd have to disagree. A good system does not require good people. Look at Bitcoin.
Okay, but that's not that you're talking about a monetary like program that runs itself. That's completely different from people governing themselves.
Maybe, or maybe someday we'll have a governing system that's like that and can't be changed. But if the American system were more unchangeable, like for instance, if they had had an enforcement mechanism to keep people from going all Hamilton and going all Lincoln, then it would have been a better system.
What do you mean by going Hamilton and Lincoln?
Well, Hamilton tried to expand the federal government wherever he found, if he felt that he could do it without, in his mind, compromising liberty, then he would push in that direction generally. I'm talking about Alexander Hamilton in the late
Hmm.
1700s.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you make a better point if you were talking about the New Hampshire system.
Yeah, the argument about federalism and anti-federalism happened while they were, drafting up the federal constitution. It's supposed to be that the federal government is very limited. And they should have held him accountable when he started to go against the Constitution, or the people should have amended the Constitution. All of the people have to consent to the changes that you're making if you're going to change the rules of how the government that they consented to. That's why we have constitutional amendments. Um, so the problem is that government officials don't hold each other accountable too. They used to more. I mean, you know, and that's something that I was trying to kind of lead from the front too. Like, let's hold people accountable. We need accountability and transparency in government again. And that's why, when Sherm did what he did, I was very public about it. And the body I mean, I think that impeachments need to come in vogue again. And it starts with Republicans holding Republicans accountable because we're the ones who are supposedly, in supporting the Constitution and defending it and upholding it, where the Democrats just pretend they do. And but if we have people in the Republican Party who are flouting it and violating their oath and they're never held accountable, then we're still stuck in this situation. I think eventually we might reach a point, hopefully, where, I could pray, where people will start being held accountable, and it'll start with the Republicans. And then, I mean, all these Democrats voting for socialist programs, it's antithetical to the Constitution. Not only the federal Constitution, but the New Hampshire Constitution talks about monopolies and government's only supposed to be instituted for the common good, not for any special class of people. And, the body has the ability, the legislature can eject its members for violating their oath if it so chooses. So I think we're getting there. I think like that the momentum in New Hampshire is good, where we have people in the House who are constitutionalists and who do want to see the rule of the law that was put in place followed. But we're just not quite there. And the speaker's nomination yesterday was a big disappointment because I know that Len Turcott, had the Republicans nominated him, he would have led from the front and he would have ensured accountability for first of all, the runaway bureaucracies that we have. And second of all, would not have tolerated, the attempts to expand by the Democrats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to give you a 4-minute warning,
Oh,
Leo, where
sure.
the Zoom shuts me down automatically at the 40-minute mark, and so we have four left. So I do want to make sure that if you have something important on your mind that you haven't had a chance to bring up, that you have that chance over the last 4 minutes.
I think that people should really, especially libertarians, read the writings of the founders and framers. Like read the Federalist Papers, read even their contemporaries, like Alexis de Tocqueville's Democracy in America. He came through and showed how it was really like from the localities, then to the counties, then to the state, then to the federal government, and how, a republic ensures the rights of the individual. And we already have that system if only people would just enforce that it be followed. And there used to be, private arbitration with the justice of the peace. Or if like an elected official on the town level violated their oath or was violating the rights of the people in the town, they could petition the county court and bring them to a court of equity and say you're violating your contract to be our essentially our employee. We elected you directly and you're using it against us, and they could be removed um, by that, and they could even face fines. There's nothing in the Constitution about qualified immunity. So it's just, I think that a lot of the federal court cases that have been like since Bruin, and they've returned to originalism, an originalist interpretation. It's a really good thing, and that a lot of bad law and bad precedent might be overturned by that, and we might see rights restored to a lot of people over the next 10 or 20 years. And so what I see a lot from libertarians anyway is that they don't go and look at, John Locke or Blackstone, William Blackstone, who was our first professor of common law in America at Harvard. And they don't know what common law is, and they kind of talk about it because that's what they want, but they don't understand that it already exists and we have it. So I just encourage like libertarians to go back to the contemporaries of the revolution, and like even like Cato, and learn what the maxims of common law are, because I think a lot of the principles that libertarians say that they hold are found in those maxims from trials by jury for hundreds of years from England that were carried over here and kind of served as the principal backbone of our Constitution and why it is the way it is, plus the taking out the worst of that system that they came here with, and the best of other systems around the world, and they just were trying to make a system where the people ruled themselves. And I think a lot of us forget that, and it would be good to go back and look at it.
Well, Leah, if you have other concerns you want to get on the air about uh, the New Hampshire government or whatnot, feel free to get in contact with me again. I will take some of your concerns to the 100,000 audience at Free Talk Live. They have an audience of about 100,000 still. I'm pretty well shadow banned myself, so I don't get very many hits on my podcast and YouTube anymore. But I will try to summarize some of your concerns. So this
Okay.
will hopefully have been a good use of your time.
All right. Well, thanks for having me on. Always happy to have a conversation.
All right, you take care, Leah.
All right. You too.
All
Bye.
right, bye. Do you value your privacy? Want hardware that works? Get Linux at New Hampshire's very own thingpenguin.com.